Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to NickTalks. I am fully prepared. I got my espresso and my hydration and a full page of notes. So this may be a shorter one because I just kind of wrote it in the last 45 minutes. Just things that are on the top of the head. You know, sometimes it comes out earlier than others, but hope everyone's doing good. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you all. Hope many successes have found you this week and today. So, without further ado, we'll jump right in. All right, so I want to kind of start off, instead of jumping right in to the taters here. I was going to include this in the life hacks bit, but I don't think it really fits there, so I'm going to say it now. But something that is pretty important, you know, because if you're watching this, and especially if you're a return viewer, the concept of the desire to reach success and working towards that is something that is obviously close to the heart, and something that has to be extremely clear in this endeavor is the opportunity and the willingness to take risks, because without that you don't get really anywhere. I'm just testing my camera shake there. If you don't take risks, you don't reap the reward, really. I mean, you can kind of inch your way there, but it's going to be slow, and if ever. And if you're too scared to take the risks, a lot of times you don't have the guts to make it all the way. I mean, at least that would be my intuition. So like, for example, I haven't shared this channel with anybody as of now, right? I've been doing it for probably almost a year now, actually, which is crazy, on and off. And I haven't shared it with anyone. I mean, some people, some friends, and some family know that I have it, but almost no one has access to it. And today, I have decided to share it with a few people. I shared it with two of my friends. And that kind of comes with the fact that I plan on having one of them on, really brilliant guy. I plan on having one of them on very soon. This video is probably going to come out 2 weeks from now, so first week in February. And even that is a risk. But the point being here is that in order for me to take this where I want it to go, which this, I guess, is more of a passion project side thing for me, becoming more and more focused on it. But if I always do this by myself and I never take the initial risk of like doing it with another person, even just with a friend, it stays in this dormant stage. And if I don't take that risk, I can't learn from it, and I can't learn from the failures or the successes that come from that. And in order to get this where I want it to go, I have to be willing to take the risk of putting it out there and engaging in ways that I haven't before. And so that was kind of my mindset in shifting from just me to having the first person on, who is someone that I think is very interesting. And, you know, it's a friend. So I'd like to just have a conversation with them and make it public. I think there'd be some value in there. And the secondary risk of revealing it to other people, because I said initially in some of my first videos that I didn't want to share it because I didn't want to utilize any benefit from out or inside sources, essentially. So like, I want it all to come naturally. I think that I'm pretty close to revising that, and you know, you got to use what you got, right? And I'm obviously a big proponent of using the cards that you're dealt and not crying about what you don't have. And so I don't know. I don't know where I stand on that yet, but I at least want two people to know, and so that way I can kind of get some feedback early, since fucking nobody watches this shit anyways yet. But the point is, you got to take risks, right? Like me moving down here, risk. Me leaving school, risk. Me, you know, any of these things that have led to what I would argue to be pretty great success, and learning and opportunities and whatnot. you have to be willing to take that step that you might not take. And even if you're afraid of it, think it through first. Obviously, I'm not saying just jump. Sometimes that's appropriate, but I think a lot of times it's better to think things through. And then if it seems like it's a good idea, jump anyways, right? But that's kind of how I'll preface the start of the video is if you're on this journey, then you gotta be willing to put yourself out there in ways that aren't really that comfortable. And even me doing this, sometimes I get in front of this camera and I'm not super stoked about it, and I don't know if it's gonna go anywhere. Maybe I should just like kind of turn my attention somewhere else. But this is the decision that I've made, and so therefore I'm going to be doing it. And even if I look silly or I look goofy, or even if I show this to my two buddies and they say that this is the goofiest shit I've ever seen in my life, that's a risk that I'm willing to take and that I can learn from, right? And being stable enough to accept that. So, that being said, we will jump right into the taters. So the first one, I'm surprised that this hasn't come up yet, but it's something that I think is very important. So from 1 to 7 years old, you're taking in the imprinting process of the people around you, the world around you, your immediate surroundings, and you're learning lessons from that, and it's programming you to be who you're going to be, right? And so anything that happens in there, you're not real liable for, right? And I would say that like 7 to 12 to 13, depending on your consciousness level, you're not real liable for that either, but I would make arguments otherwise. I would say that, myself and others that I have been in contact with and that I know very well have had to make some tough decisions in those times that require you to think outside of the box and to kind of, as I'm about to get into, rewrite some of that programming that comes from your early ages. So my first point here is you have to rewrite the programming from the sins of your parents, right? And this is basically like when you're growing up, you're taking in the input of who your parents are or whoever is bringing you up, right? The people who are around you are teaching you the kind of person that you should be. And once you get older, you cannot blame that anymore. You cannot, oh, well, this happened when I was young, so I can't do this now, right? My parents weren't good at being social, so I'm not. Or, my parents weren't good with money, so I'm not. My parents didn't know how to work on cars, so I'm not able to do that. And that is somewhat of a victim mentality where you can blame external circumstances for your own personal circumstances. And if you want to get where you're going to go, I'm sure you can do fine without this, but I would say on a personal level, you have to accept the hand that you've been dealt and play the best that you can. Maybe it doesn't go well, maybe you don't get to the final rounds, but hopefully you take the pot home, right? But you can't continuously blame your programming for who you are today, right? You can't blame the fact that your parents were alcoholics for the fact that you drink so much. You have a decision to make every single day, and if you refuse to admit that, it plants the seed in your mind and your subconscious of being a victim and not taking accountability for your actions. Because after probably 12 at least, you are responsible and accountable for your actions. And if you refuse to take accountability and you let the world tell you or yourself tell you that you are not accountable and it's not your fault and it's somebody else, then you're never going to fix the problem. And that is something that has been instrumental in me becoming the person that I am today, because I try my best at least to refuse to blame those who brought me up for the problems that I face today. Now, it's not the same as acknowledging the mistakes and the input, right? For example, I did not grow up with money, as I've mentioned in the past, right? And as someone who's very young right now, I did not have kids when I was 19 or whatever. Neither did my parents, right? But the point being is that sometimes it's a little out of your hands. But I believe that there's always a choice, and you can always make decisions that can change how your circumstances are. And therefore, the fact that I did not grow up with money, initially I just believed that this is the hand that I was dealt, right? This is like, my parents just aren't wealthy people. That's just not who they are, right? But as I've grown older, I've discovered that really there was some errors being made, right? And that's, they didn't know. They didn't know. Maybe they still don't know, whatever, right? It's no fault of their own, or it is fault of their own, but I'm not going to blame them or whatever, put that on their doorstep. But they are not good with money, and I have always had a horrid time with managing money because I just don't know how. I was never taught that on a personal level. School doesn't really teach you, at least the school that I went to doesn't really teach you how to manage personal finances at an advanced level or even a remedial level at all, right? And I've always been terrible with money, overspending, under-earning, not seeking out good opportunities, not budgeting, not recording finances, not any of these things, right? So I could definitely blame my circumstances or the way that I was brought up and say that it's my parents' fault that I'm not wealthy now because they didn't teach me how, right? Which there may be some truth in there, and maybe it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility, which I believe is a big principle to take. Many times it's not your fault that these things are happening, but it is your responsibility to fix them and act accordingly. So because I know this, because I know that one of my big faults is money management, I have to work extra hard to kind of rewrite that within my subconscious, within my habits, within my daily practices, so that I don't let that become the problems of others. And I especially don't let it become the problem of my children, right? And this is the biggest issue that, part of this conversation, the biggest issue is this segue, this cascade of habits that lead into the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. You have to look at the sins of the people before you so that you may atone for them and pay the price so that nobody after you is going to face that issue, right? And so you have to just look at things for what they are and look at yourself for who they are. Am I an angry person? Maybe you are. And then look at, okay, what examples did I see of masculinity in my early ages? Was my father super angry all the time? There you have it. So now you can see the origin, but now you have to work to rewrite that within your system so that it doesn't become part of you, or you at least, if it already is part of you, you can make it so that it isn't part of you anymore, and so that it won't be part of your sons and your daughters, and they won't have to experience that, and you can change the course of your family history and most likely the history of the people around you, as I'll get into later, because of the choices that you make. You have to make that choice. And is it a sacrifice? Yes. Is it fair that you were dealt that hand? Probably not. But you got it either way, right? That guy's sitting over there with 2 aces and I got a freaking a 2 and a 3. What am I going to do with this? Probably not much. But you play the hand that you dealt, right? And kind of segueing off of that, I feel like I kind of dumped that out there. I'm not sure if I expanded on it fully, but just to cap that off briefly so I can get into this little offshoot here, just look at yourself and think of all of your habits, and then think of what you saw and what you heard and what you were part of when you were young, and say, okay, that's most likely where that came from. It didn't come from nowhere. It didn't just become part of you. You were programmed to think this way. And not in the sense of like we're all in the matrix and you're programmed, but you are literally programmed by your surroundings in your early ages. You're a sponge taking all these things in. And so now in your older ages, it's your job to rewrite that programming and become the person that you want to be and that you believe that you should be for the benefit of yourself and others. So the offshoot here is using your success as a metric to apply to adult behavior. So now I've always believed this fact that like, my family just didn't have money. It is what it is. That's just how they were, right? But now that I've like gotten older and I've started really dialing in on managing my finances and tweaking this, I can look back and see like, wait, I'm freaking in my early 20s here. So the fact that I'm doing this now, why couldn't my parents do this when they were in their 30s, 40s, and whatever they are now? You start to realize like, oh, these people just didn't know or didn't think or didn't try or didn't have access to the resources that I have now, right? I don't choose to believe that. I think that everyone has always had access to resources. It's just now it's easier to get to them. But this whole, I suppose I didn't phrase it quite properly there, but when you start obtaining some sort of success in a certain area, like if you start becoming fit and you think that people who are overweight are just overweight because that's who they are, and then you start putting in the work and realizing like, oh no, it's a choice. It's a choice, right? I make a choice every single day to go to the gym every single day. And if I miss a day, I feel bad about it. And I recognize that that was a failure. That was a failure. And people who don't have that same metric are either super skinny or super fat or just kind of have some dad bod in the middle, right? But the point is now you can apply the logic that you've maintained this through your actions and see, okay, this person is just not doing these things. They're just not exhibiting these habits. Maybe they don't know, they haven't learned, whatever. You give them any excuse you want, but a choice is a choice, right? So, and this kind of comes into this whole quote here, which is an original Nick quote. I'll shed that right now. But a man of iron can tell when a man is made of brass. And essentially what that means is when you start really solidifying who you are and putting in these practices and putting in the work and becoming this rock solid individual who is getting after it, you can tell when people are full of shit. You can tell when people are just not doing the work because of who they are and how they speak and how they act and how they react to things and, you know, the actions that they take. And is there value in that? Not really, because it's kind of more of just a judgmental thing. But it's at least you can recognize that. Like if someone gets in your face and is screaming, you can, you know, kind of take a second and process that and say, okay, would I do this? No, because I'm stable emotionally, right? This person obviously isn't, and therefore they're most likely not doing anything to promote emotional stability. They're probably not going to the gym. They're probably not, you know, meditating or taking time with themselves. They probably have too many bad habits and too much noise and all this stuff. So with this whole, you have to rewrite the programming. Once you rewrite the programming, you can see with fresh eyes those who have not, and they have not put in that work, and they have not even tried to rewrite their own programming, which may have come from when they were a very young person, and now it has just turned into something much more problematic, right? So that's the first topic there, which I think is a big deal. I think it's a big deal, and I think that if you really internalize that and really accept it, it becomes much more beneficial as like, okay, maybe I have poor genetics physically. Maybe I don't know how to manage money. Maybe I'm not good at communicating my emotions. Maybe I'm not good at keeping my house clean. Maybe I'm not good at whatever. And just recognize that, like, I think that there is some value in looking back on the past and seeing where it may have come from so that you can identify the cause, the root source, and then say, okay, now I know that, you know, there is some programming going on and I can at least understand the people who caused that better and maybe even help them, right? But now it is also my responsibility to take it upon myself to make sure that that doesn't infect the people who come after me and it doesn't infect the people around me, which is, I think, very important, and some, you know, at least some kind of purposeful action where you're understanding that you have to take action so that others aren't infected by this disease of mediocrity, right? You know what I'm saying, G? Jesus, I feel like we started out kind of serious. I don't know. Maybe it's pulling on the heartstrings a little bit, but because, you know, not everyone's perfect. Not everyone's perfect. You're not going to come up with the perfect parents. You're not going to come up with the perfect people or perfect siblings or whatever, but it's your job to kind of understand their faults and learn from their lessons and their anti-models. So, with that being said, a perfect segue from this topic is the next one, which, again, has been very beneficial. Obviously, I don't write these things down unless I think they're beneficial, unless they're going to help, but some of these things are much closer to me than others. And this one in particular is something that has allowed me to see much more clearly, and that is, just because someone loves you, it does not mean they are able to give you good advice. And at face value, I think it takes some more digging. This is not my quote. This is not something that I came up with. This is something that I heard maybe from Ed Milet, maybe from John C. Maxwell. Might be his deal, but The point here is that just because someone cares about you and is in a position to be a loving character, even if they're fantastic and are always supportive and all that stuff, it doesn't mean you can go to them with all of your problems. Meaning, as stated previous, I would not go to my parents and ask them on how to manage my finances, because I know, based on examples, based on historical evidence, they don't know. They don't know shit about that. They don't know anything about that, right? Now, if I were to ask them maybe, how do you get by on a low budget? Maybe that's a more appropriate question. But, going forward, I don't think that it's as appropriate a question. And so it's really, it comes down to this principle of analyzing subject-based credibility, which is only ask advice and ask questions based on what you at least perceive as credibility in a certain area. Like, don't ask someone something if they haven't proven to you or at least suggested to you that they know something about it, right? I feel like that's pretty simplistic of a topic. I don't have to really expand on it super further, but I would say that the moment that this really kicked in for me, because I had heard it a while ago, probably over a year ago, and it immediately made sense, but it didn't really sink in until I was talking to my dad about try not to air out dirty laundry here, but we'll say this. Okay, I'm getting out of the fucking woods here, into the weeds, into the bushes, and getting cloudy. But I called my dad, and we were talking normal, shooting the shit, and I was having some relationship issue, and I said, hey, I didn't really brief him on the whole topic because I don't really go into all my stuff with my parents, but broad view, I said, hey, listen, I'm having some kind of weird issues that I don't really understand, and I'm not sure what to do about it. And he said, well, relationships you got to remember, they're a game of give and take. And I remember sitting there in my car on the phone and thinking, what the fuck does that mean? What the fuck does that mean? How does this help me? How does that provide any kind of clarity to this problem at all? There's no direction after that. Give and take, right? Are you saying that I should take less and give more? Or are you saying that I should balance those things? Or are you saying that she's taking? Or what is the point there? And it was right there that I realized that, this person, although he may care about me, historically has never exhibited signs of relationship success, right? That's as close to not airing out dirty laundry as I can get, right? But I've never had examples from that party of how to properly manage relationships. And so then immediately I recognized, this message sinks in of okay, I can't go to this person with this problem because they don't know how to fix it. And although they're going to try because they care or whatever, they're not going to give me any advice that I can really use. And this kind of doubles down on something that I believe I brought up in an earlier video I didn't. I'd never put it in the video because I thought it sounded arrogant. But I had an issue several months ago where I had a hard time because I couldn't find any mentors, anyone who knew more than me about things to kind of teach me the ropes or answer questions that I had. And I realized that when you reach a certain level of a certain height in knowledge or in practice or in personal development, sometimes it's the case, as I have found, where the people who are around you in your current groups, your workplace or your academic environment or your friend group or whatever, aren't in a position to give you advice because they haven't gone as far as you have. And that's a kind of lonely place to be, and I had a problem with that for a while, but I've kind of since, I pay it gladly, as I said very recently, accepted that sacrifice, right? At least I can provide some knowledge for others. But the point being there is that you have to recognize when someone is not proficient in an area before you ask them for advice. because they're not going to be able to give it to you. And you have to recognize if you are further along, like if we're neck and neck, like if it seems like we're kind of going through the same situations, and I feel like, maybe this person has an outside view that I could value, and then they give you bullshit advice, and it's like, okay, maybe I was wrong, right? That's a pretty, I would say, normal thing to do, and at least you know now where they're at, right? But if it's obvious, you have to take a second and process, not with emotion or ego or anything, just reality, just process like, oh, okay, I am deeper in a relationship than I've ever seen this person go. Then you have to kind of recognize that I may have way more knowledge on the subject, on how to create a complex and intimate and successful relationship than this person has, and therefore I should not be going to them for advice. Now, there may be other things that they are proficient at that I can ask them advice on, but this topic, not so much. And so recognizing that, and that way you don't waste your time, and you don't risk the embarrassment of them being like, me, and give you some generic response, right? And you don't get disappointed, because if you're disappointed by that, then you just didn't think it through all the way. So again, to reiterate, although these people may love you, they may support you, they may be at your back all the time, it doesn't mean that they know everything about everything. And emotion or love does not imply inherent intelligence. Alliteration there. It does not imply intelligence. It does not create intelligence. It does not mean that just because, like, if the more someone loves you doesn't mean they're smarter about everything. It doesn't mean they know more. It means they're going to try and help you the best they can, but they probably don't have the tools necessary. They haven't done all the stuff here. I'm not going to ask my freaking dog about theoretical physics, because he can't even talk, right? So right there, that's a primitive example of how to use this. And I think that this really comes in handy, because in that way you're not just spinning your wheels, and you're not getting bad advice that you think is good advice by people that don't know what they're talking about. At no fault of their own. It's, well, again, it is their fault because they didn't learn anything about, topics that are prime. But the point being is just look at the people you're asking advice for and recognize, do they know what they're talking about on this subject, or do they not? And then base your questions on that. And then that way that's even better, because now you can steer conversation in realms that they're comfortable in and that they actually know things about, and you can take many nuggets out of there. But at least you're not spinning your wheels in some dirt that you're never going to get traction in. But that's my point of view. So just look at who you're talking to, and if you see them succeeding in this area of life, ask them questions. Ask them all the questions you can think of. But if you don't see them succeeding there, maybe think twice before you're asking them for advice on this topic. Right? So, with that, I will move on to number 3. And that is, I didn't even really take notes on this, but I understand what I mean. So basically, I had this conversation with my brother not that long ago, where when you start going down the right path, especially like committing to be good and honest and virtuous, it now becomes your responsibility to commit to that path, because you can recognize that any failures that you have ripple throughout the society that is based around you. And this I have right here, It's a Wonderful Life responsibility. And that is, if you've seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life, essentially this guy, George Bailey, I believe that's his name, he grows up in this town, he's a good guy, and he's always honest, and he helps everyone out, and he's just really tries to do the best that he can for the people around him, the people that raised him, the people who supported him. And then he comes upon some hard times, and he meets an angel, and he wishes that he was never born. And thus his wish is granted, and he gets to see exactly what the world would be like if he was never born. And this is a really good example, because you never know how you're going to affect people. And this is a great argument for why you should choose good over bad, because you don't know who you're going to tilt in that direction. Right. But the point is that the more that you choose to push and push and push towards a greater direction, the more you make your life better, and the more that you genuinely are making improvements, the more you raise the bar for the people around you, and they have to either move up with you or get the fuck out of the way, right? And this is something that I've seen a lot in my work life, where when I go in and I initially start in a place and I come in with a, not to toot my own horn, but a solid fucking work ethic, and I'm pushing, I'm busting my ass, and I'm being honest, and I'm not cheating or lying or stealing, and working harder than anyone else, I see people who are not willing to make that sacrifice start falling off, quitting, moving different jobs, right? Is that because of me? I don't know. I'm not going to claim that, but I would say that I noticed that many other people start raising to that frequency, and they start meeting those standards and working harder. And, you know, if I promote team values, like, listen, I'm going to fucking help you out. If I see you in a tough spot and I can help you, I'm going to do it. I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I'm going to help you out because we're a fucking team, right? And I see other people, if you do that, they're willing to do it for you. And then all of a sudden, they're willing to do it for the next guy. And then because you were willing to do it for them and they were willing to do it for the next guy, even after you leave, you've created this ripple in the pond of now people are just helping each other, right? And people who are not willing to do that are outside of the status quo, and therefore they have a choice either to leave or continue down this path to where they're hated by everybody. And so therefore, if I were to go in there and I set the standard, and then all of a sudden I back off that standard, now the standard is what? Going to be set by these people who didn't set the standard before? No, they're going to go right back to where they were before. They're going to meet you where you are. And so if I start slacking, if I start stealing or not helping people, and they see that, even if it's subconscious, it registers as like, oh, we don't do that anymore. We're not playing that A game anymore, so I can go ahead and slack off too. And so therefore you have this responsibility to act at a higher level, because the more that you do, the more other people have to around you. And you never know how this is going to affect people. Like, I have no idea who I've influenced positively or negatively in my life, because I'm not going to say I'm Mr. Perfect. I haven't been on my A game all the time, and many times I've been engaging in bad activities and, you know, whatever. And I don't know how that's pushed people left or right. And obviously you're not going to be perfect either. You're going to make mistakes, and people are going to see that. But as long as you own up to it and you take responsibility for your actions and you try to get back on that horse, get back on the wagon, and really try and be better, other people are going to see that, and they're going to be either inspired or just pushed to take action in that direction as well, right? And so this kind of comes more of a philosophical element, I think, which is like, I'll always argue for free will. You could do whatever you want. If you don't want to do anything with your life, I'm cool with that. Fine, right? But at the same time, you're not only choosing that for yourself, you're choosing that for everyone around you. If you don't commit to positive values, you don't commit to working hard, you don't commit to making your life better, then those values are never going to ripple out. And I would argue that if just a few multipliers in the population started doing that, the ripple effect would be immaculate. It would be amazing, right? And you would see it all throughout culture. But, you know, we don't always have that. So, if you're on the fence about going to the gym, if you're on the fence about studying harder, if you're on the fence, you're procrastinating about doing your finances, if you're procrastinating about working on that project you've been putting off, or you're procrastinating about putting yourself out there or taking those risks or doing those things or making yourself better or learning that topic or you know, getting that skill or getting that degree, just remember that it's not really about you. It's not really about you. And you got to do what's best for you, right? I'm not saying to just go down a path full bore because of the responsibility to others. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you have a responsibility to figure your shit out and push yourself in a better direction, because the more you do that, the more you show people that it's possible, and the more you show people that you can make real changes. You can do these things. And you elevate the society around you, anyone that you interact with, to a higher level. And what better thing is there in life than that? What are we all doing here? What are we all doing here? What is this community for? What is this society for? What is this culture for? What is this population for? If nobody sets the standard, there will be no standard set. Standard set. Whatever. So, and you can get really into the nuts and bolts of this, but just remember, if you're going through a tough time and you're having a hard time pushing through, sometimes this really helps me out. Like if I'm having a tough set at the gym, or I'm feeling lazy and I don't want to do my work, or I'm at work and I kind of want to slack off, and I want to call off and I don't want to do things. You have to remember that someone's going to see that. Someone's going to see that, and someone's going to take that to heart, and it may be just the final push they need to really embrace this sedentary lifestyle of not going the extra mile. So if you are out here and you're performing every single day and you're on your A game, then you never know who's going to see that. You never know who's going to be pushed to get a little bit better and where that's going to take their life. So imagine just the butterfly effect of your positive actions and how that can really push a society to whatever magnitude that I'm sure we can only speculate, to greater heights. I don't know. Maybe I'm spewing here. Maybe this is just something for me, but I don't believe that it is. I think that if you internalize this, and I think once you start taking these steps, you'll see it as well, both positive and negative. If you start stealing, right, being dishonest, scamming people, you'll see that the people around you are going to be more okay with that behavior, right? They're going to be more able to justify it because now we do it. It's not just me doing it, we do it. So therefore, the more you push, the more of a responsibility you have to go even further. Because you're not just doing it for you, you're doing it for everybody. Everybody. Even just somebody who sees you on the street picking up that plastic. You just did it for you. You just did it to pick it up because it's the right thing to do. But you don't know who saw that and who's like, damn, like I gotta be better. So that's what I'm saying. And you never know, if you're down, if you're having a hard time, you're falling off a little bit, just remember, like, you don't know how much of what you've done already has impacted people in a positive way. And you don't know how much influence you've had over the people around you, even if it seemingly is none. You have no idea the influence that you've had. And I think that's important to remember, especially when things are rough, So take that as you will. But like I said, this one might be a little shorter. We're not too far along, but I'm going to go. I'll recap all of this quickly, and then we'll jump into our life hack because we are almost at the end of it, boys and girls. We're almost there. So, first topic, rewriting your programming. Do not blame your circumstances. Do not blame your parents. Do not blame your caretakers or your upbringers or whatever for what you're going through, right? Take accountability, take responsibility, and fix your shit, dog. Clean your fucking room, dude. Pick up your shit. Get it all together. And the more you do that, the stronger you get, because now you're not kidding yourself. You're not tricking yourself into believing that it's somebody else's problem. Someone else's problem to fix, someone else's fault to admit, right? It's your shit. You may not have caused it. Again, it may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. And, just remember that. Internalize that. Write that shit down. You got a pen? Hope you do. And just because someone loves you does not mean they give you good advice, or does not mean they can give you good advice. And remember to look at, what did I say? The principle of analyzing subject-based credibility. Look at what people are good at before asking them for advice, and recognize that if someone is bad at something, you don't really want their opinion, because they're not going to give you good advice because they can't. They have no idea, right? You want to know how to build a car? You know somebody who builds cars? Ask them. Don't ask the freaking bum who's never owned a car in his life. Just look at who's good at what before seeking information. And this can go for media as well. If you see somebody, which I guess you could argue, why take advice from me? I have not exhibited any signs of success. There you go. But I would say just look at what I'm saying here, and I'm not wrong, at least in theory. So just look at the success of others in what arena they are in and use that to establish where their credibility lies. Okay? And then It's a Wonderful Life Responsibility. If you haven't seen that movie, go watch it. Be much more context for this. But you don't know the consequences of your actions, and you don't know how much you'll influence people by doing the right thing and doing a better thing. By going to the gym and showing and committing to it and showing people that they can affect their weight and their size and their health and their fitness, all of these things, then sometimes that's all it takes. And then they're like, no shit. And then they go and do it, right? And being there for them and supplying that, like, hey, listen, I go to the gym every single day. I go to the gym every single day. You can go 3 days a week, right? Just do it. Just do it. These are the resources that I have. Being there for them, and we have a responsibility to each other as a community to push higher, and establish a stronger standard, man. Like, the more you raise that bar, you set the bar here, people may not reach it, but it's better than down here. It's better than where they were, or better than where they were thinking about going. Or, maybe they were, I might just take a day off. Well, that guy never takes a day off, and he's all right, so there you go. So they might not meet you there, but at least they're going to come higher than where they were, right? So those are my points. With the life hack is store all ideas for future use. And this is something that I started doing not so recently. I've kind of always done it, but I'm much more organized about it now. So essentially, it's like if you have a project that you're working on and you're real excited about it, and you do a bunch of work, and then it turns out like, I don't really want to go into this anymore, right? And so you throw all that shit in the garbage. Don't do that. Save it, store it, because you've already done that work, right? So instead of having to, maybe someday you'll come back and be like, damn, that was actually a good idea. And then you got to redo all that work. Save that so you can come back and be like, oh, okay, this is what I was thinking, and you can kind of get back in the groove. And maybe there were some really good ideas in there that you didn't know about, right? Prime example of this. I was trying to start a t-shirt company with a couple buddies of mine, and we were working on it for like 6 months to a year and thinking things through, talking things through, and then one of the partners was not doing a whole lot of work, and so it was starting to fall out, and then I moved, and then it really fell out, and then it kind of ramped back up with a new partner, and we were like really working on things, and then some of the equipment shit out, and then we started falling off. And so my argument was like, hey, we can take a break from this. We can just put this on pause, and we can, work on our shit. Like, some of the people I was working with, they had school, and some of the people had their own business, and, we've all got our own stuff that we're working on. All of the designs that I made, and all the business plans designs that we made, and all the business plans that we made together, and all the printing stuff, and the skills that we learned, and the failures that we had that we could learn from, it's all still here. Right? So instead of deleting everything, just save it in a folder somewhere, either physical or online. And then later on, if we have the free time and the capital and the desire to do so, we can pick that bitch back up and fucking put it back on the rails, right? But if we delete all of it, then we got to start from scratch. So no matter what it is, if you're passionate about something and you start working on it, then just save it somewhere. And then that way you can go back to it, and you never know what that may rekindle. You never know what that might become. And also, if you've got like 100 failed projects and then you get really successful on one, now you can port some of that success into one of those projects, and maybe it'll become something even more. Maybe it's just not the right time for that. So store everything, save everything. Do not delete stuff, because it can be useful later, right? So that's kind of it, ladies and gentlemen. You jumped through that motherfucker pretty quick. Although it was quick, and although I kind of ran through it, I don't know if I'm speaking at 2 times speed here or whatever, but this one is something that like really came in like from deep in the mind. for me. Like, this is stuff that I've had in my mental sphere for a long time, and I just haven't thought to bring up. But it's things that have really helped me iron out focus and figure out ways to make myself better. And so I hope you can internalize some of these things, and I hope that they help you as much as they've helped me. And if not, fucking click on the next video, man, whatever. But I think that these things are really applicable, these topics especially, because it's really about elevating yourself to the next level. And this is much more personal than it is outwardly business, money, monetary, whatever. This isn't really currency. This is like, if you take this stuff and you internalize it, I truly believe that it's going to make you take the next step or move in a positive direction. And especially the first one, man. The more that you move away from being a victim, the more you take the wheel of this fucking big ass boat that's your life, right? And the more that you play the victim, the more you're just crew. And that's it. You want to be crew? That's fine. You want to be the captain? Take the fucking wheel, man. Leave that fucking bullshit on the dock, right? Because you can't accomplish anything if you got this voice in the back of your head telling you that it's okay if you don't make it because of this excuse. And they're just excuses. They're fucking excuses, man. If I had all these excuses, I wouldn't have moved here. If I had all these excuses, I wouldn't have taken risks in the jobs that I've taken. If I had all these excuses, I would probably still be in fucking college, right? You gotta move away from being a victim. And if you take that far in your mind and really process that, fruit flies, man. I believe you can apply that in many areas that you may not even recognize, because some of these victim mentality things are so deep in us that it's hard to rewrite them. And I'm not saying that I've rewritten all of them. Many times that I'm like, damn, bro, if this motherfucker would have just done right, I'd probably be doing pretty good right now. But you gotta fuck all that, man. Just get rid of that. Push it off to the side and be like, what am I doing now? What are my choices now? Because that's all that really matters. The only person who can guide your life is you, right? If you want to sit and cry and moan and bitch and complain, you might as well go sit in the rocking chair, right? Doing nothing, going nowhere, moving no place. Or get the fuck up, get all that boo-hooing out of the way, process it, and then take action. Take accountability, right? Just because my parents are fucking shit with their finances doesn't mean I have to be. And it especially means that I have now the responsibility to correct that bad behavior so that my children and the people around me don't suffer from the enabling of me being fucking garbage with my money. Because the better I am, the better everyone else is going to be. And you never know who that's going to help. I mean, it's a pretty direct line with kids, right? If have all this emotional baggage that I don't know how to deal with because none of my fucking family did, and then, I have kids, they're going to pick that shit up right away. And now they're going to be carrying around this emotional baggage that was 70 years before them, and they don't even know where it came from. Well, it obviously came from me, but you know what I mean. So, before I finish out, don't be a victim. Take responsibility for your life and understand that you do have a responsibility to make your life better. Because if you don't, the people around you will be less willing to do so. And if you do, and you're still a good guy, still a good gal, still hanging out, still being cool, still being social, then people are going to be like, okay, this is a normal person, and they're doing these things pretty well. Maybe I can emulate this. Maybe I can copy this. And then maybe they try it out, and maybe it works out, and maybe they're, better off for it. So not only is it better for you to admit responsibility and accountability and push yourself and be better, but it has real world consequences, right? And then the life hack, save all that stuff, buddy. Put all that stuff in a folder, boy. You got some good ideas? Write them down. They turn out to be shit ideas. Put them off to the side, but keep them. The back burner, it exists for a reason. That's where you keep all that shit that's not ready for the front burner. Keep it there. Keep it there. And someday you can move it up. Cool? So, getting pumped up, man. This stuff I'm real passionate about. I'm real passionate about because a lot of people I see just
gosh, I wish I had money. I wish my dad wasn't like this. Ooh, my family sucks. Ooh.
Fucking grow up, man. What are you gonna do? Sit and fucking cry all your life? God damn. That being said, I appreciate you watching. Thank you. Please leave input down below. Let me know what you think. If this impacts you positively in any way, I would really love to know about it. And let me know how. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will say, Nick out.